Hi again. Some of you will recognize this painting that I did that I really didn't like. So today I'm going to show you how I turned it into that, which I am much happier with. I also put resin over it, which will be later on in this video. Alright, so I use Liquitex Gel Medium. Let me back up a little. I apologize. I got started and realized that I'd forgotten to turn my camera on. So what I did was I took a stencil and just taped it down with some painter's tape that I would be able to peel off. Now this painting had been sealed already with Kamar varnish and the UV Archival spray that I generally use. So, and it had been sitting for quite a while. If you want to see the painting of the video of this painting, of me painting this painting, it is video number 22 on my list. And just look for the little numbers in the titles. And if you want to go back and see how I did this painting, if you want to watch another one of the wispy style paintings. But I couldn't like it. I tried so hard to like it. I could not like it. I added another spot or two to it. Still didn't like it. This was after I finished the video. And I couldn't like it. I let it sit because, a lot of times you'll like them better if you let them sit. Nope, still didn't work. So I decided to use this one to experiment on. This was my first time ever, and I mean ever, using a stencil. So this was a totally new experience for me. All right, so what I'm doing there, I took some of the Liquitex Gel Medium, which is clear when it dries. It's white in the jar, but it's totally clear when it dries. And I didn't want it, obviously, to be clear over the painting. And I have some mica powder. So I took and mixed one of the mica powder pigments that I have in with this. I can't remember which one it was that I used now. It was something like antique brass, I think. Antique gold. That's what it was. Sorry, I had to get up and go look. Antique gold was the color that I used to mix it in. So I just, mixed some in until I was happy with the shade of it and used a palette knife to just kind of spread it on there. Just spread it like you're spreading butter, as Olga says on Smart Art Materials, if you've watched her videos. This is what gave me the idea. She has done a video where she embellished some acrylic paintings that she had done. Some acrylic pours, I think, that she really felt like needed something, didn't have enough to them. So she used a stencil and put a portion of a mandala on there, which looked beautiful. So, but I didn't have a mandala stencil at the time. So I went, when I was doing this, I just found one, I don't even remember where I got it now, Michael's, I think, that I was happy with, because I couldn't wait to order one. So, alright, so I just taped it down on here and started spreading the gel medium on there. I'm sorry. You all that have watched my videos before, you're used to my weird little lapses where I go brain dead for a second. I start watching what I'm doing sometimes, and then I just forget that I'm supposed to be talking and telling you all what I'm doing. So I just was trying to be really, really careful to spread it very gently, because I didn't want to smash it down in there to where it would ooze up under the edges of the stencil. Like I said, I had never used one before, but I did know enough to not do that you don't want to get it up under the edges of your stencil. Now, I did try to, sadly, this is sped up just a little bit. I was very slow at this. I was trying to be super slow, super careful, was trying to get it really smooth. There were a few places that I did not get it as smooth as I probably should have. I don't know what else I could have done, because I kept touching up and touching up with some of these spots. And I don't know, maybe if I'd used a different type of palette knife, or because I just kept getting little grooves here and there no matter what I did. I, I think, I think you'll see at one point here that, I go over the entire thing, I think, trying to smooth everything out. And it seemed like no matter what I did, I just ended up with little lines that were left from the palette knife. But that was okay. It didn't ruin it. I just would have liked a little bit smoother finish. But for me, I think it's just going to take practice to do that. And for anybody who's wondering, that what I mixed my gel medium on is just a little piece of Yupo that I had laying around that I was using for when I did a swipe painting for one of the girls, and I had used that piece of Yupo to swipe the acrylic paint. So, all right, once you get your medium down, don't let it dry. As soon as you get done with it, with putting it down, take that tape off very carefully so that you don't shift your stencil around. And I'm sure most of you already know that. How you get to be 51 years old and have never used a stencil before, I don't know. I just never have. So very carefully, I did not pull it up that fast. Let me remind you that this is sped up just a little bit. I pulled it up very slowly and very carefully. Just set it aside for a second, but don't leave it long. Make sure you wash that stencil off quickly, or that gel medium will dry. It does wash off with soap and water. You don't need anything special to get it to come clean. So there was my first step with that. You see, I wandered around for a minute with the stencil in my hand, couldn't figure out what to do with it. I had nowhere to set it. I didn't want to get that gel medium on everything, so that's what took me a second, and then I'm back with it, laying it down. All right, next step, Mod Podge. The last time that you all saw me attach something to wood, I had used the Elmer's adhesive spray. Well, that worked good, but it stinks. It is nasty smelling. And you have zero time, in my opinion, to move your painting around if you don't get it exactly right. It just, when you stick it down there, it sticks down there. Now, you can peel it back up, but as I started, the one that I did before with it, as I peeled it back up, it left all these little bumpy parts, and it was really hard to smooth out again. So I decided to try Mod Podge. This is another first for me. Yes, I'm 51, and I have never used Mod Podge. This was my first experience. So I just took a foam applicator. I dumped it out in a bowl so I could get that big wide brush in there, and brushed it over my wood. And there you go, just stuck that right down to it. Smoothed it out really good. I used one of my wide craft sticks. I put, just like I did in the other one, I put parchment paper over top of this and then smoothed it out with craft stick. Obviously, this was after this had dried. I did leave this for a few days before I did this because I didn't want to damage the gel medium. I wanted to make sure that it was completely dry. If you get Mod Podge on your paper, don't worry about it. Just dampen a paper towel and wipe it off. That's what I was doing right there. Some of it that sort of oozed out just a tiny bit. One quick tip, and I think I mentioned this at the end. If you stain your wood, seal it with Kamar or something, some kind of spray, before you try to resin it. You will see what happens. It took me until after I was done with the first coat of resin to figure out what my problem probably was. I got all kinds of pitting in my resin. So just, keep that in mind. Seal your wood before you resin. Everything did fine with the Mod Podge and stuff, but the resin did pit, and I think it's because it was an oil-based stain. So definitely be sure that you seal it, or you're going to end up having some issues like I did. And I ended up having to sand it down some and re-resin it to get most of that out. And I've actually got one spot that I missed. I'm going to have to do it again on. So there you go. I just smoothed it out, got all that off. Then I let this sit and dry for a while. Not a while, for a few days. And when I come back, we will be doing the resin. And I walk you through the resin on this pretty much step by step for those of you who have not used it before. And so the next part of the video is a little bit long, where I actually mix the resin in front of you. And I'm sorry for the length of it, but I've had some requests on how to use resin. So I thought I would show that to you all in this video. Alright, there you go. You can see how it looks. Sealed to the wood. I could have just left it like this. But on to the resin now. Okay, we're ready for the final step on this one. I'm just going to put a coat of resin over top of this. And since I have not actually shown you all step by step the resin, and I've had some questions about it, I'll go ahead and show you mixing it up. As you can see, I taped up the back side because I don't want to have a bunch of resin drips, where I have to sand it down. So I'm trying to do that just to make it the cleanup part of it a little bit easier when it's done. Trying to think. Alright, so this is just a little cup that I found that's got some measurements on it. Since I'm fairly new to covering with resin, what seems to be working pretty good for me for one this size is about a total of 2 ounces, which means the resin that I use is a 1-to-1 ratio. So it's going to be like 1 ounce of resin and 1 ounce of hardener to bring it up to a total of 2 ounces. And I may have a little extra from that, but that's okay because I've got some other projects I'm going to do today anyway. Alright, so I'm using art resin. This is, it says non-VOC on it, that there's no volatile organic compounds, which is the gases that it puts off that is so extremely bad for you. I don't know. I'm not a chemist. I have no idea. I am not using a respirator today, but I would highly recommend that you use a respirator. I am still looking for one. I had been going around places in town trying to find one, because you'd think you could find one where they sell paint, but the ones that I'm finding are not good enough for what I want. I want a little bit better version. So, alright, let me move this. And I am just mixing it straight in the cup. I have heard people say this is fine. I've heard other people say don't do that. You should pour your hardener in one cup and your resin in another cup, and then mix them together in a third cup. And even at one point saw one that said you should, after you mix it in a third cup, you should pour it into a fourth cup and mix it again. Well, mine gets done all in one cup, but that's just me. So, you can make your own decision about that. But this works fine for me. I have not had any trouble so far with my resin not hardening. So, but I do make sure that I mix it up really, really good. Now that was the hardener that I just put in. I used to try to put the resin in first, but I was talking, and it doesn't matter. That makes no difference which one you put in first, resin or hardener. Yep, lost my line. But you do need to be careful that you get your measurements fairly exact, because if you have too much resin or too much hardener, your resin will not cure hard. It will have soft spots or stay tacky, and you don't want that because you'll ruin your painting that way. So make sure that you measure very carefully. Alright, get this out of the way. So now comes the really boring part for you all, because I just stir and stir and stir and stir. The directions say, I think, to stir it for about 3 minutes. And while I'm stirring, I frequently scrape my sides. I hope y'all can see this. I can't really tell. I scrape my sides, I do my stick, and I need to move that just in case I drip. That would be not good. Wait a minute. Sorry, I got some hardener over there and I didn't want to set the painting on it. Okay, back to stirring. So, you're supposed to stir this for about 3 minutes. Now, I don't know if you all can see this. It's kind of cloudy looking. Well, you'll know when it is mixed together good. It will not be cloudy at all. It will be just crystal clear. And even once it turns clear, I stir it for a little bit longer just to be on the safe side. So you want to always keep raking your stick down. I just use these big fat popsicle stick thing, the craft sticks, to stir with. And I've been stirring this a little too fast, so I'm getting a lot of bubbles in it. You want to stir fairly slowly so that you don't get a ton of bubbles, because you don't want bubbles in your painting, your resin coating, when you're done with it. But I have been, since I'm talking and stirring at the same time, I keep getting carried away with my stirring. But that's why you use a heat gun or a torch, either one. The heat from that will pop the bubbles in your resin. I have actually seen, now I think it actually might have been Art Resin on their website. There was a video that said that it's actually not the heat that pops the bubbles, it's the carbon dioxide from your breath. Well, it does not work for me if you blow on it, and I'm not going to blow all over the painting anyway. I'd pass out. The heat thins the resin and makes it easier for those air bubbles to escape if your resin is thin. Which reminds me, before I started videoing, I put my jugs of resin into a warm water bath. Now you don't fill it up over the top of your jugs or anything, just they were probably about, I don't know, over halfway covered in the water anyway, of very warm water. You know, not blistering hot, but warmer than just lukewarm or room temperature too. You want to get your resin warmed up a little bit. It will mix easier because it thins it a little because it's warm. It will mix easier and it will make less bubbles in it as you're mixing, and those bubbles will come out easier too since it's a little thinner to start with. So, you know, it's starting to get really nice and clear now, although you all probably can't tell because there's so many bubbles in this. But it's getting much more clear, but I'm still going to keep stirring it for another minute. And I'm sorry, I know this is just dreadfully boring. Trying to think if there was anything else that I had gotten ready beforehand that I didn't show you. Make sure you've got plenty of paper towels on hand. And you have about 30 to 45 minutes working time with this. Once you start mixing it together, you know, it's about 30 to 45 minutes. It depends on the warmth of your room. The warmer your resin gets, the faster it will harden. But you cannot do this in a cold room. It does not work well. I've tried it. It does not. You need to have your room temperature somewhere around 72 to maybe 74 degrees or so. It works much better if your room is warm. Alright, so now if you can see it, it's all full of bubbles, so you may not be able to tell, but it is clear. It's not milky looking any longer. When it's not so full of bubbles, you can tell there'll be, like little marbly, wavy lines in there where it's not completely mixed. But, make sure that you get all around the edges of your cup, and don't try to mix in something that is not flat on the bottom. If it has little ridges and bumps in your cup, you will never get your resin mixed good. You're going to end up having spots where there's too much hardener or too much resin. So, alright, so there's the resin ready to go. Get that back in where you all can see it. Now, another thing to remember to do, make sure there's nothing on your painting, first of all. Fuzz and mess. It's super windy here today, so I may have an issue with fuzz and dirt, unfortunately. You want to have something on hand. Sorry, I'm walking to get mine because I forgot to get out. But you want to have something on hand to cover it with after you get your resin on. Otherwise, you're going to get little bits of fuzz, animal hair, whatever, happens to be floating around the house. It will get in it. So after you resin it, this is what I use. Just set a tote over top of it and leave it be. Alright, so one more thing before I start. I'll find somewhere to put my tote down. I've got a mess in here right now. Got way too many projects going at one time. Make sure it's level. That's the important step before you're done. Now I did make sure this was level before I turned the camera on, when I put my push pins in, which is one thing that's great about these, because you can raise them up or down for however you need. But since I've moved this around, I've just got this little torpedo level here that it's got a hole that I can see through on the top, and I'll just go around and check all the sides, and woo, that is really not level right there. There it goes. Sorry, my bubble's getting stuck. I don't know if you all can see it or not. See, the bubble is just dead center there, so. There. And since my bubble's just a tiny bit off, the back side on both sides needs to come up just a hair. But if you don't have your painting level, your resin's going to just pour off whatever your low spot is instead of staying on good. There we go. Much better. Nice. Okay, we're good. Alright. So, you can see some of the bubbles have popped just sitting there for a minute while I was making sure everything was level. If you're doing one at a time, you've got plenty of time to do this. If you decide to resin more than one at a time, I wouldn't recommend it until you are comfortable with using the resin, because it gets a little trickier. You've got to get it done quickly enough to not have your resin start to set up on you before you get finished. Oops. These little cups, I just picked these up at Hobby Lobby one day. You can find any kind of cups like that. I just saw these and got them because they've got in ounces and in milliliters. And sometimes, I don't love these just because there's not a way that I can easily do, you know, something like 3 ounces. I mean, I can't get 1.5. There's no half marks on here anywhere, so it makes it a little bit trickier. So if I'm going to do that, if I have to mix up more than that, I'll just try to go ahead and say just a dab of that in there. I'll just mix up a little bit extra, and then if I do have something else I can go ahead and put it on, I do. I'd rather have too much made than too little made. Alright. Did I mention the paper towels? Make sure you've got lots of stuff handy. Now, I get my hands all over it. Some people don't. I do. I'm wrapping a paper towel around my heat gun. I already have one around my torch. You can see the safety thing on my torch is permanently stuck open now because I got resin in it. Alright. I use my hand because I just feel like I can get it better that way. I can feel where I don't have any resin yet. So I'm just going to try and get it right up to the edges right now. Now I am going to go around the sides on this one, but I don't want it just pouring off the sides, so oops, I'm trying not to let too much of it go over, although some of it keeps sneaking over on me. I'm sorry, I know this is scooting around. I should have put something under my little push pins to make them not slide so easily. You know, make sure you look at it from different angles to make sure that you haven't missed any spots too. I've got tons of bubbles right now. Alright, and then I'm just going to run my hand around the edge. I'll just get it on my hand and run it around the edge there, because I just want to give it a coating. I didn't want it to have a thick layer of it on the sides. I'm sorry. It's scooting all over the place. And watch that you don't, you know, start getting too many drips underneath on the bottom of it. I did put that tape on there, but if you get a thick buildup of resin on the bottom, it makes it a lot harder to get the tape off. And you may end up sanding. Oh my goodness. I don't know why this seems like it's sliding so easily today. Alright, now you all can probably see the bubbles. There are bubbles everywhere right now. I'll show you. I'll pick it up in just a second. Making sure I got all the wood on the top covered. So, now, I don't know if you all can see it or not. I can't tell. But there are lots of little bubbles in here. And some not so little bubbles in here. So, I'm going to hit it with the heat gun. Give it a little bit more. See, I've already seen fuzz in here. The wind is blowing so hard today. I don't know what the wind speeds are, but it's not low, I can tell you that. Now, if you do end up with lots of little fuzzies that you can't get out, if you end up with lots of little fuzzies that you can't get out, you don't notice until it's dry or something, You can redo it. You can pour resin back over it again in another layer. Just sand it down a little bit, just with some fine sandpaper, so that your new coat of resin can grip. And you know, find the spots where you've got stuff stuck in it. See if you can sand it out. What I need is a toothpick or something, but I don't have one down here. I don't know what that is. Don't know what it is, but I don't want it in there. Oh, wait a minute. I forgot. I have this. I don't know. I saw some other big fuzzies in here and there, but I don't know where they went. And this, something like this can also be really useful for popping bubbles too. If you see big bubbles in there, you just give them a little tap and get rid of them. I'm going to go over this with the torch this time, because I always feel like the torch gets the bubbles out better than the heat gun does, but I do like to do the heat gun first, just to thin it down. Alright, you don't want to stop moving. You can scorch your resin. You do not want to do that. It always makes me want to hold my breath when I'm doing that. And I, for some reason, already see some little like fish eyes starting in here. You'll see, if you do this, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's little dimples on the resin, and I don't know what is causing that on this, unless I just got something on it that I'm unaware of. I'm going to try to just smooth things out a little here, see what happens. I may end up having to do a second coat of resin on this one. And that, if you get those little dimples in it, the little fish eyes, yeah, you can just pour another coat of resin after it dries. Just do another coat, sand it lightly, and do another coat to get rid of those. I am scooting on you, I think. I stirred up a bunch more bubbles in there now. Sometimes I can't tell if something's a bubble or a fuzz. Either way, you don't want them. That's a fuzz and I can't get a hold of it.
Are you in the bathroom or doing something?
Alright. Yeah, I just touched my mouth with my finger. Gross. Probably extremely unhealthy. And it tastes really nasty. Still seeing a few bubbles in this. I'm having a much harder time than usual getting the bubbles out of this. I probably did not let my resin warm up enough beforehand. And I was stirring rather quickly too. I try to stir really slowly if I can, so I'm thinking I'm probably going to end up doing another layer on this one, just because the gel medium, where I got it too thick in places, it's kind of sticking up above the resin, and I'm not liking that. So I'll probably end up doing another coat on this one before it's all said and done, just to get rid of that, because that's me. I mean, somebody else might not even notice that, but that's the kind of thing that would bug me. So according to everyone who knows me, I have a tendency to notice any little nitpicky thing that nobody else would ever notice. And even if they did, nobody would care. But I do. And once I notice it, that's it. That's all I can see when I look at something. Once I see it, I cannot unsee it. So I just want to make absolutely sure I got all the air bubbles out that I can. All the little fuzzies out that I can. One more hit with the heat gun. Then I put some little resin down there to fill in where it was a little thin. Trying to get it to sort of level out there. This resin is self-leveling too. It, you know, if you pour it in something or on something that's got dips and things in it, it will level out. I'm just getting really mad at this one because I have never had so much fuzz get in one before. Well, that'll be a good lesson to me to make sure that I don't do this when the wind's blowing again. Although here in southeastern Washington, it's very arid and dry, deserty area, and the wind blows a lot here. We have some hills, but nothing that could be termed mountains. Well, not to me, even though they do call some of the mountains. We've got Badger Mountain and Rattlesnake Mountain, and to me, those are hills, they're not mountains. Trying to blow that back over there now. Yeah, this one's definitely going to have to be re-resined. I must have not gotten all of, like where I stained the board, I must not have gotten all of the like oily residue that stain leaves. Didn't get it all off of there or something, and it's gotten into the resin now. Alright. Well, it figures the one that I picked for you all to show this would be the one that I end up having more trouble with than I've ever had, so that's the way it goes, isn't it? Alright, I'm getting this overworked. You really should not do as much heating and things as I'm doing to this. You really shouldn't. I don't know why I'm having such a struggle here. Alright. Yeah, there's definitely something in this because I can see it spreading. Yeah, if you touch it with your finger after you've heated it, be really careful. Oh yeah, there's a big old fuzz there. Because it gets really, really hot. And you definitely can burn yourself. Whatever, that little fuzz is just bound and determined not to come out of there. I'll rake it towards the side, but sorry, I was trying to spread some of this back over to get it smoothed out a little more. See, there it is again. Thought I had it, but I didn't. And another. I'll tell y'all, this is frustrating me to no end because everywhere I end up digging out fuzz, I also stir up more air bubbles. I've got all these little divots and stuff in here now. It's kind of a mess. So this one will definitely be getting another coat of resin, without a doubt. Just extremely beyond frustrated with this. Alright, so just before you stop, just make sure you run around your sides, that you don't have any drips. You know, run around that bottom edge, make sure there's no drips coming down there. I'm going to give it one more hit here because I rubbed it and made air bubbles, but this one may be unsalvageable at the moment. From what I can tell, it is. For right now, anyway, not for good. But, there you go. That gives you an idea of what to do. And hopefully you'll do it better than I did. Not have quite as much trouble as I did with it. Usually by the next day, you know, about 12 to 14 hours, I don't mess with it, and I'll check it after that. Your resin should be set pretty good, but it's not going to be completely cured. If you are doing this and intending on selling or giving away your painting, you need to make sure that this has at least a couple of weeks to sit and fully cure before you try to pack it up to ship it somewhere or something. The resin will still be dentable even though it's dry, although you can hurt resin. It's not glass hard. I don't care what people tell you. You can hurt resin. And if you use it to make coasters, even the heat resistant resin, which I believe art resin is one of them. It's supposed to be heat resistant up to, I can't remember now, 200 degrees maybe. But I have heard people say that they still had coffee cups dent the resin. The heat from the coffee cup did. Now, I don't know if that's because the resin wasn't mixed properly, or if it actually can just dent that easily just from that amount of heat, or if it just was being used too soon. You know, obviously the longer you can let it sit, the better. You know, if you've got a month, let it sit for a month. It's not a bad idea. So that's it for this. I will, you know, definitely be revisiting this one, but I won't make you all watch that. You kind of get the gist of it and see what it looks like anyway once it gets that kind of shiny coating of resin on it. Well, I hope that y'all enjoyed this. A little bit of different things that you can do to your paintings with the, you know, the stenciling on it to kind of add a little embellishment to it, and just what was supposed to be tips on resining your paintings, but more turned out to be a disaster. So but that's alright, I can fix it. I'll just sand it down and redo it once it gets done. Oh, but if you do have to do that, so sand it down, be real careful. You don't want to go down far enough that you're going to actually hurt your painting. You want to use, you know, fine sandpaper and sand it lightly at the top. You don't want to try and dig things out of it, because you'll end up messing up your paper. And now it will look cloudy when you sand it, but when you re-pour the resin, make sure you clean it good. Clean it off with some alcohol or something after you sand it. Make sure it's completely clean and completely dry. Water and resin do not mix. It will ruin your resin. But what was I saying? My mind has gone blank. Oh yeah, it will be a little cloudy and scratched looking, and that's fine. Your next coat of resin will shine that back up again. It won't leave, you know, whitish looking scratches in your stuff when you pour that next coat of resin on. It fills it in nicely. Okay, here we have the finished product. I apologize for the reflection. To get, you know, decent shots, I've got to have the lights on in here, and once the resin is on these things, the the gloss on them is just incredible. It really is like pouring liquid glass over top of them and letting it harden. But let me bring you down a little bit. And you can see, sorry, you can see my little camera stand there. But you can see you've still got this beautiful gold color shining through the resin there. And this is after the second coat. I did put another coat on it because I was very unhappy with the first one. And I still have got this little divot. Where is it? Right in there. Oops, I see another one reflecting right there now. But that's the only place. But I think I figured out what the problem was. When I stained this wood, it was an oil-based stain. And I did not think to seal that with something before I poured the resin on it. Now, you know, I cleaned it off, but that did not help, obviously. And so, sorry, I wet my finger. I have done this again since on a different painting. And that time I took my Kamar varnish and sprayed the wood to seal the wood down before I put the resin on it. And I did not get that, the pitting that I was talking about when I was doing the resining on this one. So, and I'll have that one on a video up sometime as soon as I get a chance to do a voiceover on that one. It's a pretty long video. So I hope y'all enjoyed this. I hope it gives you some good ideas for ways you can embellish paintings that you're not really thrilled with. I just, you know, like I said, I kept this one and looked at it and looked at it and looked at it, and I could not like it. I just could not like it. Just really felt like it desperately needed something. So I'm a lot happier with it. I really like the way that kind of livened it up a little bit. If I were just a little better at doing the resin, I would be really happy with it. So, all right, well, there you have it. I was trying to see, I can give you all a, you have to ignore my mess. I'm carrying my phone around with me right now. This is the one that, oops, sorry, I've got stuff drying there. It's gonna fall over. This is the one that I was talking about that I did not end up getting all the pits in the resin, and I will be doing a video on it. This is one that I did some alcohol ink in my resin around the edges to see what I could do with that, because I had not tried that and just thought that sounded really cool. I've seen some painting, you know, resin paintings that people have done, and knew that you could use the alcohol inks in the resin. So I decided to try and see what I could do with that. I know people have done that with ocean themes, made the kind of waves and froth for the water with white alcohol ink. So that was sort of my idea. And I will have that video up. It's probably going to be about a week before I get a chance to get that one up. So I have another one that will be coming up before that one, sometime in probably 3 or 4 days after you all see this one, once it's posted. So I will get back with y'all soon. Actually, if you want to see it, let me figure out what I did with it, and I'll show you the painting that'll be in the next video. I actually just finished it not long ago. This is the one that will be in the next video. Another, you know, very wispy looking painting. So there you go. And if you wanted to see the painting of this one, I think I mentioned it earlier, but it is number 22 in my videos, I believe. If you want to see the actual me painting the painting in this one rather than just what I did here to embellish it. All right, well, I hope y'all have a great day, and I will be back with you soon. Bye.